Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, we've met. I'm looking at your resume here. You've done a lot of really interesting things, and we'll get into what you've done here at Solar Richmond.
Okay.
But I'm curious, it looks like you owned your own pizza place.
Yes, I did.
Wow, for 7 years.
Just about, yeah.
Wow, so what kind of things did you have to deal with there?
Well, being an owner, I had to deal with everything. I was even hands-on, so I do the cooking. I even drove around sometimes.
wow.
I dealt with the salespeople. I did all the accounting, all the book work.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot to it.
So at this point, what do you think is the most important thing that you've learned here?
Basically the discipline, being organized, being punctual, and not being afraid to ask questions.
What kind of a team do you like to work in? Can you notice a difference when you maybe go to an install and there's like certain teams that are more collaborative or more individual work?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's some people who just rather sit back and watch. And then there's a lot of people who want to be just in there and helping out and doing what they can.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell they want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that I enjoy. I enjoy working with someone who wants to work hard also.
Since you own your own pizza restaurant, and I'm sure it looks like you've also worked for other people. Do you know what type of manager you like to work for?
I like someone who's a little hands-on, who's constantly giving me feedback. A lot of communication. It helps things run smoothly, I think. So yeah, someone who's really hands-on. There's some, I think, who just like kind of sit back and leave you alone and they're going to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd rather have someone there who's always communicating with me daily. Mm-hmm. That'd be nice.
Have you ever worked for somebody where you didn't really like their style of management?
Well, unfortunately, yeah. During my teen years, I worked with my dad. And
right.
He was hard on me.
Right, that's one of the toughest managers you probably had.
So outside of that, I think I've done pretty well. I've been lucky.
Do you feel like you've come to a conclusion on kind of the best way that you like to resolve any sort of conflict that may arise within a work team?
Well, I've always been one to communicate. It's hard for me to hold back. If I feel something, I want to talk about it. So for me, that's been the best way. Just sit down and work it out.
Great.
So if you're quiet too long, things tend to simmer a little bit, and I like to avoid that.
And at this point, you're definitely kind of heading in a new direction with your career.
Yes.
So, where do you think you'd like to be 5 years from now?
I really like the carpentry. It feels right to me. But I want to be equally as good in installing the PVs or the solar thermal. Whatever there's a demand for, I like to be good at it.
Do you think that you'd want to be sort of managing these projects at some point, or do you kind of prefer doing just the hands-on work yourself and being in there?
I definitely have a take charge kind of a personality. It's hard for me to sit back and just... So at some point, yeah, I see myself as being a team leader one way or the other.
Cool. How do you think you would deal with the situation if you and your team were up on a roof doing an install, and someone came out of the house? Let's say you don't know who this person is. They come out and they kind of start panicking. The people are on their roof and they don't understand what you're doing up there, and they're screaming and yelling, get off my roof. How do you think you would deal with that?
Well, they should know we're on a roof anyway. But
that's true. But what if you have no idea who this person is and they obviously don't know the connection?
I just come down and talk to them, and if it felt better for them, I would bring the team down, and until I spoke to the owner who I'm dealing with one-on-one, I'll make sure I get a clearing from them first. Mm-hmm. That way everybody's on the same page.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that once or twice, you know, I think I asked the question and you didn't quite directly answer it, and I'm not sure if you were a little bit confused as to what the question was. So I just want to tell you that part of like kind of being comfortable, it'd be great for you to be able to say, could you clarify that a little bit more? Do you mean this or do you mean that? And I think that never looks bad to ask for clarification on questions. So just know that you can always do that. Some of the questions, your answers were a little bit short. So it's always better, you definitely don't want to go on and ramble. But I think there's times where, as you're answering the question, you could just like add a little bit more to the story. Early on, especially, maybe you were a little bit more nervous in the beginning. But you can definitely, you know, when I asked about the pizza place, you can definitely tell me a little bit more about it. Something to keep in mind, you know, a lot of times people, when they're asking about your history, they want to hear a little bit more about what you were doing.
Yeah.
I had also asked you about your contributions to a team, what you think that you bring to that team. And you talked about being organized and taking things step by step, which was great. The only thing I would say, you probably could have expanded that and made it a little bit larger of your contributions, you know, such as because you've worked as a manager already, you understand how to motivate people. You are collaborative. It seems like you would work well with a group. So you almost could have probably added more. I'm guessing just from having spoken to you in this conversation, you probably have a lot more to add than being organized and taking things step by step. So, you know, before you go into an interview, you definitely just want to consider, what do you think your contributions are? And I think your list would be actually longer than that.
Yeah.
I asked you where you wanted to be in 5 years, and you mentioned this carpentry, and the way in which you said it, I could see that there was passion behind that, and you really felt that way, which is great. That's exactly what you want to do, is talk about something that you really do feel that way about, because it was very obvious that you felt like you were really excited about the carpentry. You talked about PV and solar thermal, and you talked about that you wanted to be in a function where you felt like you were meeting demand, which was also really good. I think the only thing I would improve upon is you probably could have even added onto, why do you want to be in a function where you feel like you're meeting demand? You feel like you're making people better off than they were, you're making people happier, those kinds of
I'm
things.
getting steady.
But knowing what your 3 selling propositions are, and then the reason that's so important, what I don't think came across in this interview that a lot of folks are going to look for, is you didn't take the interview so much as an opportunity to sell yourself as just to respond to the questions. So until you know what your big selling points are, naturally I think you get in there and you're just kind of answering the question. But you need to remember, every interviewer needs to be able to walk away from that table not only feeling like they had a great interview with you, but having a reason to go and talk to other people about you. So, you know, the space that people forget about in the interview process is, once you and Christina leave the table, Christina has to come over to me, per se, and say, look, Nick, I just spoke with Frank. He's great. He's always on time. He knows how to manage a small team, and he's got the type of community relation skills that are really going to be good out there in the field. Christina can then build the case on your behalf about why we should hire you. The other one thing I think really caught my attention, and it was an honest answer, but it was a dangerous answer. She asked, what type of mentor or manager would you want? And you said, someone who's very hands-on and gives a lot of feedback. In an employer's mind, what that means is this person needs to be managed really closely, and I might not be able to leave him to go out on his own and do what needs to get done. I don't necessarily want someone that I have to quote-unquote babysit, right? I want someone who I can just put out there in the field. They know what they're doing. They're going to go out there and get it done. So a better way to frame it might not have been, I like someone who's really hands-on and gives me a lot of feedback, but saying something along the lines of, you know, I feel confident I know what I can do, but I want a manager who's open to questions and you know, when I need it, is accessible.